Nice shot. Dozer knew he could do better. The firing range had 15 pairs of soldiers lined up this morning. Some were there for extra practice. Most, like Chris Anders, were there for fucking up. The early rays of sunlight that broke over the east gave the targets an ethereal glow. The long shadows that the training equipment cast made it difficult to aim properly. Dozer had already been at it for 2 hours. He figured that he had a little more than an hour remaining. Hit 5,000 targets. Akulov had commanded him when he arrived at the range. The sleep still gnawed his eyes. They burned in protest at having been forced open so early. The sergeant appeared completely awake. Maybe she never slept. Dozer was beginning to suspect she was actually an alien. He hadn't complained. Instead, Dozer had glanced over at Kyle Rodriguez with a helpless look on his face. Kyle was the closest thing that Chris Anders had to a friend at Charlie Base. Well, apart from Kara. And who knows what the fuck Kara is anymore. Images of the previous night's activities played through Dozer's mind as he fired downrange. Had she always felt that way about him? Why? How had he not noticed? Dozer. Kyle interrupted his thoughts. You're starting to miss wide right. You need to focus, dude. I don't want to be out here all day. Yeah, sorry. Dozer agreed, straining to see the next target. The sunlight was playing tricks on the soldier's eyes. Still, Kyle was right. He needed to focus. The other soldier had offered to be Dozer's spotter despite knowing that he was in for hell. The least that Chris could do was stay on task until it was done. 5 shots, 5 easy kills. Chris suppressed a yawn. He hadn't slept more than a wink last night. It was almost mindless. Aim, shoot, aim, shoot. I wonder what Kara is doing. The thoughts came back unbidden. I guess she's probably in class. Chris had forgotten all about class. Fuck, I wonder what assignment I forgot to do this time. This place is like high school sometimes. Aim, shoot, aim, shoot. Dozer. Kyle cried in shock. Chris looked over at the other soldier in surprise. Private Rodriguez looked at him with an annoyed expression. You were about to shoot the civvy target, man. What the hell is wrong with you this morning? Chris glanced downrange. Sure enough, the target bore the white X that signified civilian. He hadn't even come close to noticing. Chris searched for an explanation. Sorry. He finished. It's a little early in the morning to be murdering civilians, don't you think, Private? The voice made Chris's blood boil instantly. Without turning to look at the sergeant, he replied, Yes, sir. Do you want an extra 1,000 targets? Akulov asked. Chris imagined a huge wolfish smile across her face. She really is the devil, he decided. No, sir, he replied curtly. Good, she stated. Private Rodriguez, you're dismissed. Chris rolled over from his prone position and gazed up at the sergeant. First you make me shoot 5,000 targets before the sun comes up, and now you're taking my spotter. Fucking bitch. Akulov stared down at him impassively. Her eyes looked as though she was practically begging him to question or complain. He offered her neither. Yes, sir, Kyle said quickly. He set down the binoculars and the hit display. Standing up, the private brushed the dirt off his fatigues. Then, he saluted the sergeant. Glancing one last time at Dozer, he turned and left. Sir. Chris was barely able to keep his anger below the surface. I need a spotter. Akulov smiled, just a little. And you have one, Private. So, get back to work. She knelt down in Rodriguez's place. Oh fuck this. Chris turned back to the field. An hour and a half with the Ice Queen. I think I like the laps better. The pair sat in silence for quite a while. Dozer was determined not to make any mistakes. Akulov made no comment on his shooting, or on anything for that matter. The hit counter clicked above 4,000 kills. Chris was getting close. The thought made him anxious. Focus, you know she won't take a fuck up easily. Aim, fire, aim, fire. Nice shot. The sergeant said softly. What? Thanks. Chris responded. Briefly contemplating looking at the sergeant, he suppressed the urge. 200 more shots were fired in silence. Dozer was hitting each one on the nose. He was getting excited. I'm on a roll. Slow down, he heard the female soldier say. You'll miss if you keep increasing the pace. Dozer felt mixed emotions about the advice that he was receiving. Mostly, he was struggling to understand why Akulov seemed to treat him the way that she did. He wanted to ask her. Almost there, this is the home stretch, she said when he reached 4,500. Try to breathe deeper between shots. It'll make it easier to hold your breath when you fire. Sir, Chris replied. He didn't miss a single shot of the last 500. When the hit counter read 5,000 kills, Chris almost cheered. Instead, he held it in. Thank you for spotting me, sir, he said, slightly colder than he had intended, to the sergeant. Something flashed behind Akulov's eyes. Dozer had no idea what it was. She eyed him in silence for a few seconds. Then, she opened her mouth to speak. They call you Dozer. You've seemed to internalize that mentality, she said, her face completely devoid of emotion. The thing is that while you may be good, you aren't that good. If you keep acting cocky, you'll get men killed. You may not care for me or the things that I do, but it is not my job to make you like me. It is my job to make you the best soldier that I can. She paused to gauge his reaction. Then she continued. I know that you come from wealth and power. I bet that it's the reason that you decided you'd rather be a grunt. Don't want to follow in daddy's footsteps. I get it. But out here, you're no different than the man next to you. Stunts and games won't make you popular, and they certainly won't make you a good soldier. You want to be great. A badass space marine. Then act like one. She stood and wiped off the dirt from her combat fatigues. Then, she looked at him again. The morning sunlight danced across her high cheekbones. Her eyes flashed in the sunlight. Dozer realized that she was beautiful in a harsh sort of way. Get to class, Dozer, Akulov stated, then she turned and left without another word. Chris Anders watched her go. His mind was blank. A cool breeze blew across his face. It brought him back to reality. With a sigh, he picked up his railgun and slung the remaining bands of slugs over his shoulder. Then, slowly and with pain, he walked back towards the heart of Charlie. It was going to be a very long day. The author's name and the link to original text is in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.